Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here. I couldn't find any really good trailers today. There was a couple, but I'm not really into it. So I thought I'd talk about this topic, which came up in my comment section about last time I talked about the end goals of wokeism or wokeness. And one of the defining aspects of the wokies, the left, is that you should not worry that much about them because they make themselves bigger than they are. You see, they use tactics. Most of what they do is tactics, tactics, tactics. And the whole point of the tactics is just to get the power. Forget about what they say about race or gender or any of that. None of that matters to them. None of it. They may say it matters to them, but not really. Because ultimately, what the true believers want is power. They just want the power. They want the power because then they'll be safe. They'll be making all the rules, and then they can't blame, they think. There'd be nobody else left to blame for all the problems. Therefore, the people causing the problems would never have control, and therefore everything will just be peachy keen, like they thought might happen in New Zealand, right? So here you have the New Zealand, it's from the National File, the New Zealand PM, Jacinda Ardern. There's not going to be an endpoint to this vaccination program. Yeah, it's like New Zealand, Australia. It's never ending, apparently. They're literally trying to nurture their own citizens to death. Why? Well, part of the reason I think why is in those countries there is no pushback. There is no resistance. Everyone has signed on to the Labour Party or leftism or whatever you want to call it, the woke. They all agree. So, okay, you've all agreed to hand me all the power. Great. Just to be safe, I want every single person vaccinated. From what I understand, they're actually going out in Australia to the Aborigines and vaccinating them, even if they don't want to. They literally want it so every single human being on their continent will be vaccinated. Will that be enough? Well, let's imagine they could even do it. They can't. There will always be some people who will resist and run away or hide or they miss them. And for whatever reason, I'm sure there's a guy living in a shack on the top of the mountain somewhere in Australia or New Zealand, and they have no idea he's even there. He's not vaccinated, probably hasn't even heard of what's going on. He's just been living in a shack. But the governments like this. And you could even argue that maybe they started from a good place. Maybe they genuinely wanted to help people, but now they're so emotionally and politically invested in their program, they can't stop. To stop now, well, they could stop. They could declare victory and stop. I mean, there's plenty of avenues to do that. But the moment they do that, they have to go back to normal, and that means less power. And that's not part of the equation they can get on board with. They don't want less power. So the alternative is, well, we just got to keep it going a little longer. Just another week. We're just about to round the corner. We just need to slow the spread. 2 weeks. That's all we need. Just give us ultimate power for 2 weeks and we'll change the world. We'll make everything right and then we'll just give it right back to you. How'd that work out? Not so good. So this is why you can never trust these people. So for the people on the left in the United States, this is why they seem very powerful. Now, it's not to say they don't have some amount of power. They have invaded a lot of institutions and have caused a lot of damage. But damage is about as much as they can do. They can do a tremendous amount of damage. They have done a significant amount of damage to the school system that we will be trying to rectify for the next 20 years or so. But it's starting to all fall apart, right? You've got parents speaking out. You've got school boards being overthrown. You've got teachers who have been caught again and again and again doing something so insane and crazy they get themselves fired. You've got the National School Board Association of America crumbling, states leaving it left and right. There is resistance to it. There needs to be more, for sure. It's not over. The fight's not over. The fight's never really over. Remember, the price of liberty is vigilance. But, the phase of the fight, the initial phase of the fight, is over. We're in the second phase where we're trying to, we're battling and winning against, say, school boards. Now the next phase is just how bad is this wokeism? How bad is it? How many institutions has it infiltrated? And the answer, of course, is a lot of them. But even though it's infiltrated, say, the military, because we're more decentralized as a country, you can't just have the military take everything over. It's just not going to work here. And it's not all of the military, right? I mean, some of the brass, certainly Miley and a few others, but politically it's terrible for them. They look like total a-holes, right? They look like complete nut jobs. And so the moment they step out of line any other way, they're gone. And these are ruthless political operators in Washington, so they don't need the baggage of a Miley, of a General Miley. No way. Will Biden throw him overboard? If something else happens, probably. I mean, they've tried to sort of rebuild his reputation. I don't know if it's worked, but he hasn't done anything else. So he'll probably hang on at least until Trump gets back in and he fires his sorry butt. Although I think Miley will resign like a few months before that. I mean, a lot of people will. They'll just resign. It'll just be like the first time Trump got in. A lot of people just quit. They quit because Trump wasn't going to do what they did before. You're going to see a ton of, if Trump gets back in, you're going to see a ton of people quit in Washington. They'll just quit. They're quitting now. The Democrats are quitting left and right because they know they're not going to win. And the whole point of it wasn't to change anything. They could fight the good fight. You can do a lot of good if you have a real campaign. You look at a guy like Ron Paul. He changed the Republican Party to a great degree. A lot of the reason the Republican Party now is very populist, really he gets the credit for that. He woke a lot of people up. And he had to run for president to do that. Because when they saw what the establishment Republicans did to him during the convention and how they installed Romney, that did not sit well with a lot of Republicans. It just did not. And they went after the state apparatuses and they took them over, and they're like, never again. The Democrats, being more collectivist, aren't doing that. Not now. They'd have to start completely over with a much better ideology. I mean, the neoliberals don't even care. They're all old. They're on their way out anyway. Nancy Pelosi's on her way out. She doesn't care. Joe Biden, I don't even know if he's going to be alive by the end of his term. There's all sorts of people. They're just too old anyway. They're all retiring. If you don't like Trump and you're not going to, you got in there to line your own pocket and you don't need Trump blowing up your scheme, you'd rather just leave and not risk getting jailed or investigated. Sure, why run again? You got your money. I got enough money. No sense getting greedy. That's what the smart people do. There'll be a few people that hang on and battle it out and try to fight Trump because, someone like AOC, what else she got going on? Once she's out of Congress, what is she going to do? Maybe get a talk show, I guess, but maybe get a show on MSNBC, I guess. Will MSNBC even be around? I don't know. I mean, CNN seems to be falling apart, right? So just, don't get too black-pilled. The people who are pushing this agenda, half of them don't even know what's going on. They're so deeply ignorant of the issues now. It used to be the other way around. It used to be that, a lot of right-wingers, they were stuck in their ways. They were very religious. They were stuck in tradition, I'll say. it didn't make them bad people. They were from the Midwest at a time when there was no internet. They didn't, they heard about things that happened in cities. They kind of knew pop culture, but they didn't really experience it on a day-to-day basis. So there's a difference in that. Now with the internet, you can experience anything at any time, right? So you can have a kid who's totally woke in the middle of nowhere because they can get online and experience all that crazy wokeness, all that stuff that, if you're in the middle of Idaho somewhere back in the 70s, you just were, a weirdo in your town. That's all you were. And I understand what that's like. I was the weirdo in my burg, let's say. I've always been the weirdo. I've always been the odd guy. So I get it. But, and back in the day, I had that problem too. Like, geez, I feel like I'm alone. And then I went to college and I met some people and it was like, oh, I'm not such an oddball. These days you don't have to go to college for that. You just get on the internet and you realize, oh my God, there's plenty of weirdos out there. But with the sort of ideology of the left, they just, part of their, most of it's tactics. Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. And they adopt those tactics and kind of ruthlessly. And because really their ideology doesn't win people over. It wins over the idealist, right? You can win over young. That's why they go after young people, because young people tend to be idealistic. So when you say to a kid, an 18-year-old, hey, we could, if you join our group, we can eliminate racism in our lifetime. That's very appealing to them, and they want to believe that's true. And since they're only 18, they don't really have the life experience to go, you can't possibly eliminate racism. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. Once you get older, you understand that, there's the way you want the world to work, and then there's the way the world actually works. You get more pragmatic as you get older. Someone who's 18 isn't all that pragmatic because they just haven't had the life experience, right? They don't know that, not everybody is on board with hooray, let's save the earth, or hooray, let's be woke. They just can't be for various reasons. And not everything the woke and the left does is good. They tend to make rash decisions. If you take a look at how the world has dealt with hunger, right? We have so much food. We literally flooded parts of Africa with extra food, which on its surface sounds great, until you realize in some parts of Africa it collapsed the economy, right? You had an agrarian economy that experienced the famine, which isn't good, and they needed food, and fine, send them food. But after a while, we sent so much food in some areas of Africa that the farmers couldn't make any money. Why would you buy grain or any of the food you need when you can get it on the dock for nothing, or you could buy it from the corrupt government there for less than what the farmers paid? Well, all the farmers basically went out of business in some of these areas. And so now they can't raise the food they need. Now they're dependent upon the food coming in. This is part of the problem with welfare. That's why it has to be very temporary. Because otherwise you make people dependent and then you have a bigger problem. And that's what happened to some of these, not all of Africa, but parts of it, certain instances at certain times. Some places have recovered, some places have not. It's complicated and nuanced. And once you realize that, well, it's not so easy as just gearing up your senior class. Like, yeah, let's raise money for the hungry. There's more to it than that. And that's why you can't listen to college kids and young people on everything. These idiots out in the Northwest, I forget what town, I want to say Washington State, proposed a 4-day school week. And on the 5th day, the students would teach themselves. And I read it on one of my news blasts, and I was just furious that they even suggest that. Those lazy, lazy teachers. Because that is truly idealistic if you think students can just teach themselves. They can't. It's the whole point of being a student. If you could teach yourselves, why have teachers at all, you morons? This idea that, oh, kids have so much to teach us. No, they don't. They don't. By definition, they don't. Okay, they have almost literally nothing to teach you. That's an idealistic thing. Oh, you have so much to teach us, and especially not the stuff they teach in school, right? If you're teaching, I don't know, algebra, does some kid who's never done algebra before have much to teach you? No, he knows nothing about algebra. That's the whole reason he's taking your class. So the upside to all this, a lot of people get what they say black pilled, which is very depressed about it, and I can see why it looks bad sometimes. The news can be very depressing. I read a news blast once in a while. I just go, oh God, this is making me mad. But overall, remember that these wokies, the left, whoever, they can do a lot of damage, but ultimately they cannot win. They absolutely cannot win. They will do a tremendous amount of damage, and have. In the past, they did damage, right? One of the progressive pushes back in the 70s were the projects. And the projects sounded like a good idea. We'll build some cheap housing for people, and that'll solve the problems. It just made crime and poverty worse. And they ended up tearing them all down. So, and it took years for them to reach that conclusion. Like 20 years later, they were like, yeah, we got to get, after many decades of just rampant crime, they realized, yeah, it's a bad idea to just build houses and give them to people, because they don't consider them a value because you gave it to them. So you have to understand there's a lot of nuance in there. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to solve all the world's problems. It's like saying, okay, you know so much, there's a homeless guy, go solve all his problems, right? And an 18-year-old might go, yeah, I'll do it. I'll take you up on that challenge. And then they go over there and, maybe the guy's got mental problems and he's a drug addict. He's got all sorts of issues, and they start giving him money and a place to live, and he's not very clean or hygienic. He's not very disciplined. There's a reason he's homeless. He's got a lot of problems, and an 18-year-old simply cannot solve them all. They would be overwhelmed by most homeless people's problems. It wouldn't be just so easy as, well, I got him an apartment and gave him some money. It's much more complicated than that, which is why you need teachers. However, these teachers, I believe, are childlike in their own way. They're infantile. And I think that's part of the left too, part of the over-nurturing. And again, I think that comes out of a female perspective of over-nurturing. And there's a time and a place for the nurturing. I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking the nature of women, but I think, look who's the PM of New Zealand. I have no doubt that she wants to help people, but she's killing them with her policies. I think she's doing she's a horror show now. She's gone so far off the deep end of nurturing. This is the result. She will vaccinate you literally forever in an attempt to save you. From what? Well, I can't get into it here. Obviously, it's YouTube, and YouTube also run by a woman. YouTube also want us all to talk nice together. But it's not only women. Jack Dorsey's that way. The new guy who runs Twitter's that way. But it's a policy and a practice that has to be balanced. Yeah, you can't be a ruthless tyrant, the sort of male energy that would come down and just make everybody do the same thing and shut up. But you also can't nurture people to death. And now, unfortunately, that's what the left is, and that's what it's got a lot of power now, seemingly, but it's all a big show. It's all a big show. It's all a big guilt trip, right? Oh, do this or you're racist. Do this or you're, if you don't agree, you're racist. That's a guilt trip. That's emotional manipulation. Don't fall for it. The main thing you got to do is take these people out of power. Just remove them from power and let them go back to crying and complaining on their own in a little corner off somewhere. Let them all cry together Let them all talk to each other, and when they come back and they want more power and they want their power back and they beg and plead and say the system's wrong, you ignore them because they have stupid, stupid policies. And that pushback is coming, I think. I think it's coming in 2022. We have to be focused, eye on the prize. So get involved with your local politics, volunteer to monitor votes, and do what you can. Knock on doors, help the normal people. Right now, it's the Republicans. Help them get elected everywhere. If only one thing, to punish the Democrats, to send them a strong message. You're out of your minds. You don't deserve power because you abused it. We did the same thing to the Republicans. They abused their power. They were all run out of office, run out of town, right? That's how Obama got in. So we need to do that to the Democrats on a much bigger scale now. Much bigger, I think. I think it's much worse. Look, Bush was bad. He was awful. He killed a lot of people. But at least that happened sort of outside the country. So one could argue, well, at least he didn't do it to his own citizens. Which isn't much of a defense, quite frankly, but, it didn't endanger the United States as a whole. It endangered our reputation across the world, and didn't do us any damn bit of good. Helped push the debt up tremendously, which hurt us internally. Helped militarize the people. But I think what Biden and the current leftoids are doing, as Sticks and Hammer would say, is worse. It's worse because it's long-term damage. It's damage to the American psyche. And but you have to not be black-pilled about it. You have to stay positive. Understand it's going to be very tough to red pill these people. Oh, it's going to be very tough. And when they're red pill, they'll go right to the black pill. You think you're depressed. Imagine someone who's a true believer finally getting that red pill, finally waking up. And people are starting to wake up. I mean, look, I don't think she's red pilled, but Sarah Silverman's complaining about Joy Reid. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty crazy. I mean, Michael Rappaport is complaining about Joe Biden. They're not red pilled, but like they kind of almost can't be, because to be red pilled, I mean, they'd be, oh my God, what have I done with my life? I supported the Democrats all this time. A lot of them I think don't really care. When it's popular to be Republican again, they'll just flip over. But we just have to be ready for that, and we can't go too far, right? We have to be the gracious victors, but the consistent thing is we have to remove these people from power, and we have to reform our power structures so they can't do what they're doing using the FBI right now. The CIA needs some reform, all those groups, all the alphabet agencies, as they say. But we'll start making those demands once people get back into power, once Trump is back, or DeSantis, or whomever. But in the meantime, don't get blackpilled. Don't despair. Understand that these guys make a lot of noise. Don't get pulled into their arguments. Don't allow them to cause you to react, because that's a tactic. That's an Antifa tactic. They get you to overreact, by taunting you and taunting you. They'll troll you all day long, poorly. But if you're stupid enough to fall for it, you make it look bad. I mean, the recent Patriot Front March, the glow-in-the-dark parade, that was to get people to come out, to get people to react one way or another. Didn't really work, right? It all looked pretty fake and staged. So, but they're going to keep trying. So, stay alert. Do what you can to mentally prepare yourself. Read things. Keep apprised of all the situations. Spend time improving yourself. Don't waste a lot of money or effort on things that really you don't need, because things are going to get tough in the next year or two. But at the end of it, I think we'll come out better. It's not going to be as tough as you think. It's going to be a little tough. Some of you may have tougher times than others, but save your money, Be frugal and humble, and don't get too black pilled. Okay, just we're gonna win this. We're gonna win this. It's just gonna take some time. All right, that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. I'm sorry for the people who live in New Zealand and Australia. We'll help you out later as soon as we settle our hash on this side of the pond, and we'll see you tomorrow.